Hey, good evening, folks. We're going to give a few more minutes for people to arrive to the meeting. Um, I think some people are still rolling in. We'll probably join within, or probably get started within the next 3 minutes by 5:35. Thanks. Hey, good evening, everyone. Um, Sorry for the late start. Just wanted to give people a chance to go ahead and get started, or go ahead and join the meeting. Um, we're going to start the presentation now, and then there will be some time for questions and answers later. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight to learn a little bit more about the Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast Bus Priority Project. Um, Also want to thank some of my DDOT colleagues for joining me tonight. Megan Carnegie is joining, going to help with the question and answer. Please feel free at any point to submit questions you might have or comments in the chat. And then later, feel free to raise your hand and we'll have some questions and comments, verbally towards the end of the meeting. The presentation should only take about a half hour. And then the rest of the time we can kind of have a discussion about the project and answer any questions people might have. In terms of using Webex, this is an open meeting, and as required by DC Code 2578, this meeting is being recorded, and it'll be made available to the public in the next 3 days on DDOT's YouTube channel. It'll also be on the MLK Bus Priority Project website. The meeting is being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page, so be aware that if you're speaking, you will be getting recorded and you will be broadcast. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may enter any questions in the comments, any questions or comments in the Q&A section of Webex. If you're having any technical challenges using Webex, please call our technical support number 202-309-3491. We do have DDOT technical support on the call and available to help with any issues you might have. And to be clear, at this point, everybody is on mute. We can unmute you during the Q&A and comment period if you raise your hand. To request to speak, you will need to use the raise hand feature of Webex. Regarding video, your video camera is off by default, and in this meeting, you're not able to share your video. So you'll just come through in voice. There will be no voice sharing. The agenda for tonight is we're going to start kind of big and then focus in smaller and smaller, kind of starting with big picture, like what is bus priority? What is our program? Why are we doing this? Then getting into some of the project background, evaluation of the car-free lanes. Those are the bus lanes that are on MLK right now. Talking about some alternatives for the future on MLK. And the next steps in terms of implementation of those alternatives. And then finally get to some comments and questions where we can hear from all of you. And for the bus priority program, I'm going to hand it over to the manager of our bus priority program, which is Megan Kanegi, to kind of walk through what we're doing around the district with this program.
Great, thanks so much, Kevin. If you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. I want to appreciate everybody taking the time to join us here tonight, and I know that this is being broadcast in different ways, and folks may also view the recording later, so thanks for spending your valuable time here with us to learn more about this project and give us your feedback. We really want to hear from you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the bus priority program. So you can see the map on the right shows the corridors that we've identified in Move DC, which is our long-range transportation plan, as bus priority or transit priority. And we are looking to improve bus speeds and reliability on these corridors in these locations. You can see in red on the map, these are the places where we have existing bus lanes. Bus lanes are one tool in the Bus Priority Toolbox, which I'll talk about in a couple slides. You can see we have lots of work to do on lots of other corridors across the district. And the study area for this project is in that little rectangle there. We have existing bus lanes, as Kevin will go more into detail on, and we're looking to make further improvements on this corridor to support those speed and reliability benefits, as well as access to the bus. This is a 70-mile network approximately, and there's lots of residents and jobs and activities, within a walk of this network. And so we really see this as a way to improve mobility and accessibility across the district for our residents. If you go to the next slide, talk a little bit about equity. And, DDOT is committed to advancing transportation equity and ensure that our investments justly benefit all residents, visitors, and commuters. We have a transportation equity statement, the links here in the slides, and I can put it in the chat after I finish with my presentation here. I encourage you to take a look at it. Investing in transit facilities and improved bus speeds and reliability is a way to help us improve the equity and accessibility of where residents need to go. And providing better bus service helps everyone access more jobs and opportunities within a given period of time. So if you can see on the right, that map with all the different colors of purple, this is taken from our Move DC needs assessment. But if you are in one of the lighter colored areas of the city, you can really just not reach as many jobs and destinations within a 30-minute bus ride. And so we're looking to help address that by keeping these buses moving. And, this is important for many reasons, but, an important one is that almost half of district Metro bus riders make under $30,000 per year, and 2/3 live in zero-car households. If you go to the next slide, what does bus priority really mean? From a rider perspective, it might mean that you can spend more time at home with your family or loved ones, or doing whatever, else you need to get done in your day. It might mean you spend less time waiting for the bus. Maybe that even, helps keep you out of the rain a little bit. You can travel farther and reach more destinations. So given in that amount of time, you might be able to reach a school or a job or other opportunity that you couldn't reach before. And then, another benefit of these bus lanes, for example, is that, emergency vehicles can use them, and they might be able to get to emergencies more reliably, which benefits us all, of course. If you go to the next slide, please. This is also important because many of these corridors have, growth projected for, population and jobs and activities. And we know that we, are not able to, in most cases, widen our roads. And so we're really working within the existing curb to curb width, and we're really trying to move as many people as we can. And so this is just a graphic that shows, an example corridor, how many people can be moved in cars and in buses with bus lanes and without. So this is just, helping us kind of think about the most efficient way to use our space, especially in corridors where we're anticipating growth in the future. Go ahead, Kevin. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. You led me right into it. And then the bus priority toolbox. So we have a toolbox on our website. I'll also put the link into the chat for that. And it has over 20 different ways that we're looking to improve the experience of riding the bus, and the safety and interaction with other modes. We know that it's not one size fits all. For these projects, we're looking to really understand the needs of the community and the specifics of each street and come up with solutions that are tailored to meet those needs. And so you're going to see here tonight some different ways that we think we can build upon the car-free lanes on MLK and make further improvements here. So if you go to the next slide, I think that is the end for me. So I'll put those links into the chat that I promised, and I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And so with this project, like all of our projects, it has a history, and I want to get a little bit into that, kind of take you through the timeline of what's happened on the project so far, analysis that we've been doing, and what we're kind of thinking for the future. And when I think about this project, there's kind of three main purposes. There's the Evaluate the Car-Free Lanes project. Those are the bus lanes that are already out on MLK. Solicit feedback from the public, so hear about how the bus lanes are working, how can we make them better. And then lastly, identify ways to improve transit and safety on MLK. And this project is from Good Hope Road, which you can see on the map on the left at the top of the blue line, to the St. Elizabeth's campus, and the project limit there is on the bottom of the screen on the photo on the left. There's been a lot of work done in this corridor in addition to, the Car-Free Lanes project in terms of planning and other ideas for improvements to transportation. So the idea with this project is to really look at all of that planning work that's been done in the past and look towards implementation. What can we take and start building in the next 1, 2, or 3 years? So looking to do a project that is planning, but also very focused on action and the next steps. We'll get to it later in the presentation, but some aspects of this project we want to start implementing this fall, before December. And then other aspects are going to take a little bit longer, depending on feedback that we get on these alternatives, determining what we're going to do. Some of those things will take longer than others. So the car-free lanes, for those that aren't aware, were bus lanes that were installed from W Street Southeast to St. Elizabeth's campus. That's the area where there was peak restricted parking. So they were travel lanes during the AM rush, heading north into the city, and they were travel lanes in the PM heading south out of the city in the evening. And so the project was to convert those lanes to bus lanes. And this was, in conversations with WMATA, at the start of the pandemic, they were having to stretch their resources, and providing bus lanes were a way that they could run their buses more efficiently and, make that reduced service go farther. So helping to preserve frequencies would reduce crowding on board the buses and at the bus stops. And that was sort of the key urgency behind these car-free lanes. And so we finished construction of them in November 2020. They were inbound from, heading north from 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And it was an outbound lane heading south from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pre-COVID ridership along this segment is among the highest in the city. It's 6,500 to 10,000 per day, depending on where on the corridor you're talking about. And actually, bus delay was the highest in the district as well. And that's looking at, how much is congestion slowing down buses in relation to how many people are riding those buses. So that tells us how much delay is being experienced. And it was 14 bus lines on this corridor and buses every 5 minutes. And the car-free lanes were installed as a one-year pilot to kind of urgently respond to the public health emergency, but then recognizing that there would be a need for further evaluation, further public feedback, and understanding how this project is working. So just a quick timeline on that project's implementation. In March 2019, the COVID pandemic began, and we began design soon thereafter on car-free lanes in different locations across the district. A notice of intent went out to the ANCs in July 2020. We issued a press release that we were going to be beginning this. Flyers went out to all the businesses. We went door to door visiting them and, understanding how these bus lanes would impact them. Put postcards on windshields of cars parked in the corridor. Then in August 2020, continued that outreach, canvassed riders and hung posters at all the bus stops, put out another press release and began construction. Construction was complete in November 2020. And so, as I mentioned, a big part of this project was evaluating how the car-free lanes are doing. And it's, there's a lot of different aspects of them to look at. In terms of the bus speeds, which is what's shown here, this is showing pre-COVID average bus speed. And the red portions of those lines are where buses are the slowest. And it's showing the AM inbound pre-pandemic. And in fact, buses heading north in the AM are 40% faster than they were before the pandemic. But naturally, buses are faster everywhere in the district. There's reduced congestion. Across the district, it's typically 20%. So, we're 40% faster where we implemented this AM inbound bus lane. PM outbound is about 4% faster across the district. And that's typical. PM traffic has returned faster than AM traffic has returned in the district. And on MLK, they're about 6% faster than the buses were pre-pandemic. And now the condition is that midday and evening inbound buses are the slowest buses on MLK. So that inbound direction heading north on MLK used to be slowest in the AM inbound. Now it's slowest midday and in the evening. Generally, buses are slowest north of Anacostia Metro Station, so north of Howard Road. And bus speeds are relatively high south of the St. Elizabeth's campus. That's where, there's fewer destinations and traffic moves a little bit more freely down there. And as I mentioned before, ridership and passenger delay on this segment is the highest in the district. In terms of congestion, one of the things that I mentioned already is that congestion is generally way down in the district following the pandemic. And this slide on the right kind of shows you what those congestion trends have been like in the district. So the blue line shows 2019, and this is the travel time for Gate 2 at St. Elizabeth's campus, on the south end of the corridor to Good Hope Road on the north end of the corridor. And you see how that AM inbound has dramatically improved. That's when traffic across the district has improved the most. The red stripe is showing pre-construction of the bus lanes in 2020. And then the gray line is post-construction of the bus lanes in 2021. And it's also during the time period when the district had resumed parking enforcement in this corridor. So this is the most recent data we could get. It's also while school is still in session. So this is kind of the best way to look at how the construction of the bus lanes has influenced congestion, bearing in mind that AM inbound and PM outbound are the times when the bus lanes are in operation. All other times, the road should be operating pretty much as it did, as it has been operating for the last several years. And, one thing that I forgot to mention on an earlier slide when I was talking about, oh no, never mind, I didn't forget this. Excuse me. So for this project, to let people know what we were doing, kind of the 3 priorities for the project to get feedback on the car-free lanes, evaluate the car-free lanes, and set a plan for the future. We reached out to the ANC's, the council member's office with an advance notification letter to let them know that we were initiating this process. And we, in April 2021, we went out to canvas riders, talked to them, hang posters at the bus stops, let them know that, we're looking at these bus lanes. We want to understand how they're working. We presented at ANC 8A at their monthly meeting and tabled at the Anacostia monthly meeting. And what these events were really focused on was understanding, what are the needs on the corridor. We weren't presenting solutions at that point. We have the bus priority toolbox that Megan discussed earlier, where we have an array of different interventions that we can make. But at that point, we just wanted to listen and understand. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that we heard from people. Just some examples. One person said, the bus lane, this was an email I received, the bus lane during rush hour is a lifesaver. This person also expressed concern that it will worsen congestion, however, and move traffic onto neighborhood streets. Another person said, I support the bus lane, but wish they weren't ugly. The person found that the red color was not attractive. That was one opinion expressed. One person said, the bus lanes are confusing and the signs are in poor condition. Crosswalks should be brighter and you should look at doing curb extensions. And so, it's difficult to know when you're allowed to park in the bus lanes and when you aren't. And this person was highlighting that issue. The fourth person said, bus lanes are a good idea, but they are rarely enforced and frequently blocked. And so, that's important feedback also. Our program of providing bus lanes is very much contingent on them being effective and them being available for buses, and to make sure that the buses benefiting from them. And I'll get into some of our solutions to these issues that people brought up as I present the alternatives. Some project area demographics. Kind of the key thing here that I think is really important to remember is the zero car households. It's 47% of households in the area. This is a large constituency of bus riders, and this is the population that we are seeking to serve and provide greater mobility. Just some quick overview of the project location. It's kind of a historic main street on the north end of it. There's lots of retail. There's some government agencies, schools, and a lot of young people on the corridor. There's also some health and social services on the corridor, and then on the southern end, it's more residential, approaching the St. Elizabeth's campus, where there's obviously large institutional employers. There's a hospital in the works down there, and there's also a lot of development in the corridor. Between the development at Berry Farms, a few different buildings at Reunion Square, and 2442 MLK, there's about 600 combined housing units coming to this stretch of roadway. In addition to the kind of evaluation that we did of kind of data analysis and speaking to riders, we did a number of field visits, and the need for bus priorities higher north of Howard Road. One of the key observations and things to note about this corridor is Anacostia Metro Station, which is almost equally important as a bus transfer station. So every single bus on MLK terminates at Anacostia Metro Station. So providing speedier and more reliable ingress and egress for buses at Anacostia Metro Station became a big focus of this project, and how we can make buses move faster through the corridor. Also observed, increased enforcement of bus lane restrictions is needed to maximize the benefits of these bus lanes. And so we're going to get right into the proposed alternatives, kind of the meat of this presentation, and what I think a lot of people want to see is what we are thinking about doing to the street. And this is where we are really looking forward to getting feedback from residents. I'm very excited about some of these alternatives that we're presenting, and I think that there are some really good options here, and I look forward to hearing what everybody else thinks. And many of the things that we're recommending are, it's not a this or that. It's like, this seems like an idea to potentially improve transit service or improve pedestrian safety. And it's not exclusive to alternative 1 and an alternative 2, which we'll be presenting both of. Many of the components of what we would want to do are shared within both of these alternatives. That includes bus stop rebalancing, pedestrian mobility improvements, transit signal priority, Anacostia Metro Station access improvements. So that's focused on access for the bus to the station. Queue jumps, bus bulb outs, and curb extensions. And so these latter three are sort of separated between alternative 1 and alternative 2. So alternative 1, you would get the queue jumps and the bus bulb outs, curb extensions. Alternative 2 would include bus lane expansion. And that's in terms of the area where the bus lane is present, and then also the hours of operation for that bus lane. And I'll get into a little bit more detail for all of these things right now. So for bus stop rebalancing, I want to start with the reasons why we do bus stop rebalancing. One of the key things is safety. Locating bus stops at signalized crosswalks is safer. It ensures that when somebody is in a rush to catch a bus or to get from their bus to where they're going, making a transfer, whatever, they're near a signal, and those are often the safest places to cross the street. And so that was one of our leading or one of our main objectives in this plan for rebalancing the bus stops. The other is that far side buses or far side stops. That's where the bus crosses a street and then stops, as opposed to having the bus stop and then crossing the street. That's just a little bit more efficient for the bus. They can save about 10 to 15 seconds every time we do that. And then the other thing is that it enables us to use transit signal priority, which extends the green time for buses and can save about 10 to 15 seconds as well. The other reason that we do it is to reduce the number of stops that a bus needs to make. We try to provide a bus stop about every 1,200 feet. That's about a 4 or 5 minute walk. And we try to make sure that there's a bus that frequently. And so I'm going to orient a little bit on this graphic to the right, because there's a lot of dots and a lot of colors. The green dots are where bus stops are located, and we're not proposing any change. So, near Good Hope Road, we're not proposing a change to the bus stop locations. There is construction happening there, and the bus stop will be relocated to Good Hope Road once that's done. But, aside from construction factors, we're not proposing any change. But the red stops are where a bus stop would be getting removed as opposed to relocated. And then the dark blue is a new stop, and the light blue is an old stop. So those you can kind of see, like, such as at W Street, you can see that there's a dark blue dot near W Street, and there's a light blue stop just to the south of it. That's an instance where we're trying to move that bus stop so that it's closer to the signalized crossing. And then at Morris Road, you can see that there's a bus stop that is proposed for removal. And a new stop would be placed at Talbot Street and to the far side of the intersection. And that's to allow us to do traffic signal priority, and also to sort of moderate the spacing between bus stops. This proposal, all of the bus stops are within a 5 minute walk of each other. So it's still a pretty moderate distance. However, this is an area where we want feedback, and we want to hear from bus riders. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on our plan to gather feedback beyond this meeting later in the presentation. Another key part of this plan is if you look at Pomeroy Road, farther to the south, this is a location where we're also proposing to provide a pedestrian crossing signal known as a hawk signal, where traffic would stop so that there was a safe crossing for pedestrians. And we would be proposing to consolidate bus stops around that signalized crossing near Pomeroy Road. Keeping an eye on my time here. So there are a number of pedestrian mobility upgrades that would be included in both of these presentations. There are curb ramps in the corridor that could use an upgrade to improve wheelchair access and to improve their overall quality. That's something that we want to do, and that's something that could be done in the near term. As soon as our team can get out there and do it. To the right, you see an image of the pedestrian signal that I was describing we're proposing for Pomeroy Road. In other locations, we would be providing curb extensions to shorten the crossing distance on side streets. And we would also be looking at opportunities to provide bus shelters on MLK. Right now, only 2 out of 16 stops have shelters. A lot of that is due to space constraints, but we think there may be some opportunities for us to find space, either through a different style of shelter than what you see what these 2 shelters are presently on the corridor, or through other changes to the curbside area. In TSP, I mentioned for Morris Road and Talbot Street are 2 locations where this is feasible. I like this graphic. It kind of shows how you're extending the green time when a bus is running late. So it lets it get back on schedule, is the general premise. And this is something that we would like to be implementing before the end of the year. Another big improvement that I'm very excited about is near the Anacostia metro station. So right now, buses, if you're heading north on MLK Avenue, you make a left on Howard Road, as you can see in the graphic, and then you make a left where it says driveway 2. What we would be proposing is to reconfigure the geometry of where it says driveway 3 to allow buses to make a left straight into Anacostia metro station. And as part of changing that geometry, we would also be removing these channelized right turns, also known as slip lanes, in creating a larger pedestrian realm on Anacostia Avenue, or on MLK Avenue near Anacostia metro station. And so this would kind of make it a more predictable intersection for all users of that intersection, drivers, people walking, and people trying to catch the bus. Oops. And then we would also be making some changes to driveway 1, which is near Firth Sterling Avenue. This would make it possible for buses to enter and exit from this driveway. So right now, buses have to do this kind of spiraling counterclockwise circle within the station. We would be making it possible for them to get out right at driveway 1. Couple other big things that are happening in the area that are separate projects, but will improve conditions for people walking near Anacostia metro station, is that the ramp on the 295 is going to be closed as part of the South Capitol Street improvements. And we are also about to begin design on a pedestrian bridge to Berry Farm from the Anacostia metro station, which is a very exciting improvement that'll really reduce walk time for people living in Berry Farm to Anacostia metro station. And so this is where there's some distinctions to be drawn between alternative 1 and alternative 2. Most of those distinctions are between Good Hope Road and W Street. So alternative 1 would be making the parking on MLK Avenue full-time between W Street and Good Hope Road. Most of that parking already is permanent, actually. It's only on the southbound side of the street that it's not. One sec. And the reason we would do that, it would enable us to do curb extensions, to shorten the crossing distances in that area, and also allow us to do bus bulb out. So there would be a larger area for people to board. By having people sometimes using those lanes as travel lanes, it makes it impossible to provide those sorts of amenities. Alternative 2 would extend the bus lanes to Good Hope Road and make them peak hour and bi-directional. So right now the bus lanes operate 2.5 hours in each direction. We would be proposing to have them operate 5 hours per day, and we would extend them 3 blocks to Good Hope Road. And this is a good reminder to think back to where the delay is being experienced on these on this roadway. A lot of it is happening between Good Hope Road and W Street. Midday and PM. But I'll get a little bit more into alternative 2 in just a minute. This is just kind of a schematic layout of how this could work. We're very early in the design phase. This is just to get feedback from residents in terms of what sort of idea appeals to them more. As you can see, there are 2 bus stops on the southbound side of the roadway. Those are blue stripes, and that is where we could be providing a much widened sidewalk to provide a larger boarding area. Excuse me. And then W Street is where the bus lane would be ending. And that yellow arrow, that's where buses would be getting out of the bus lane and into the travel lane. And we would have a special signal to allow them to do that.
Kevin, you want me to take over for a minute while you drink some water?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say on this alternative, north is to the right, just I'm sure people probably figured that out, but just in case. And these bus bulb outs, they allow more waiting space, but they also allow buses to do in-lane stops, which means buses don't have to pull to the curb and then merge back into traffic. There's a little bit of time savings by having them just in their lane. They stop to pick up passengers and then they just keep going without having to merge back in. If you go to the next slide, I can talk through this and just flag if I miss anything, Kevin. Then I'll turn it back to you. So alternative 2 has bus lanes in both directions, as Kevin mentioned, extending them north from where they end currently at W Street up to Good Hope Road. And we would propose to make them AM and PM in both directions. You can see the little chart Kevin put together at the top of the slide with the green times are parking, and then the red times are the bus lane. And so kind of gives you a sense for how much of the day the bus lanes would be in operation. And right turns would be allowed from the bus lane. You see that in the hatched area there where there's kind of the skips in the bus lane. So right turners would merge into the bus lane to make that right turn. Kevin, if you've recovered, feel free to take it back over.
Yeah, I'll see how long my vocal cords hold up. Thanks. That was everything I wanted to cover there. And so I just wanted to show an example of what a bus bulb out could look like. This is southbound on MLK at W Street, showing that, the bus is able to board right in the lane. There's no pull out or pull in required. That's where buses can get into the most accidents. And it's also, saves a lot of time for them. And then also an example of a queue jump. You can kind of imagine that if the bus lane were to end where this bus is, the queue jump would be providing the opportunity for the bus to get back into the travel lane. And it can save about 2 to 7 seconds per intersection where that's implemented. And so just a summary.
Sorry, Kevin, I wanted to note, I actually think that queue jump may have already been implemented or will be soon, because the bus lanes do end there. So I think that's an example of an improvement that's moving forward a little bit ahead. If we extend the bus lanes north, obviously we'll be making modifications to that, but since that's the existing condition of the bus lanes ending, I think that is either soon to be in place or already in place.
Yes, that is a good point. That I completely forgot that we had gotten that installed. That was something that came after the initial construction of the car-free lanes. So just a reminder, the same chart of the different elements of the 2 different alternatives, and also wanted to talk a little bit more about the comparison. Alternative 1 is better for transit overall. It can save about 4 minutes round trip for buses going through that corridor. Alternative 2 saves less time, but it's 24/7 that it's in operation. And then also in terms of congestion, both alternatives have minimal impact on traffic because it's really about it's repurposing parking spaces as opposed to roadway travel capacity. And actually, one thing that I did not mention when we were looking at the graphic of Anacostia Metro Station is that there's presently a northbound bus lane on MLK Avenue, northbound approaching Howard Road. This would be removed because, as I mentioned, all buses are turning left onto Howard Road, and there's really no way for them to use this segment of bus lane. And kind of restoring this as a queuing space to get through this intersection would actually have a positive impact on traffic.
Hey, Kevin.
Congestion, I should say.
If you could go to that comparison, I think your first bullet, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's alternative one that has the 24/7 benefits, correct?
Oh, yes, that is an error.
I don't know if you can, edit that slide on the fly, or we can do it after the fact. But,
yeah, I'll have to do it after when I'm not in presentation mode. But yeah, the extending the bus lanes is better for transit overall, but providing the curb extensions and bus bulb outs is better, or provides 24/7 benefits, not just during the peak travel period. In terms of safety, both options have really good transit benefits. The bus lane does, visually narrow the roadway, and it can reduce travel speeds for drivers in the corridor. Also, just wanted to note that the bus is the safest way to travel in the city. And if we can make buses perform better and get more people on those buses, that's the safest way for them to travel. I also wanted to talk about the parking implications of the two options and revive that graphic that we looked at earlier. Alternative one would add about 4 spaces for, well, so first let's look at this graphic. Where parking is currently legal on the corridor, there's 4 spaces on the southbound side of the street between W Street and Good Hope Road, where we would be implementing, either the bus lanes or the bus bulb outs and curb extensions. On the other side of the street, there are 24 parking spaces, and those are already permanent parking spaces, or full-time parking spaces, I should say. And then moving south, the corridor currently has those 26 spaces on the northbound side of the road between Howard Road and W Street. Except for during the AM rush, those are a bus lane now. And also southbound on the other side of the street, there are 26 spaces between W Street and Howard Road. And those are a bus lane during the PM rush. And then it's 38 spaces northbound south of Howard Road and 33 spaces southbound south of Howard Road. Hopefully I got all those northbounds and southbounds right. Sorry if there was any confusion. The key thing is that if we make the bus lanes, bi-directional during the peak hour, we would be taking away all of those parking spaces, but only for 5 hours a day. 2.5 hours in the morning and then 2.5 hours in the PM. From conversations with businesses in the corridor, the 2.5 hours in the AM is not much of a problem for them. Most of them aren't even open at that hour, with the exception of some of the coffee shops. It's really the PM parking hours that would have some impacts on them in terms of loading. So, loading would have to happen in between those two times of day, or on a side street. And then for the parking impacts of, the curb extensions and the bus bulb outs, that would be, pretty minimal, really. It would provide an extra 4 spaces for 2.5 hours a day north of W Street. There might be some more spaces that we could find in there, but our assumption is that of the, there are 4 spaces that are currently legal along that stretch, and it's unclear that it would be possible to add more. So the timeline for this project, I already kind of went through it, but last spring, we were kind of going through the existing conditions, doing that needs assessment, public engagement. Over the summer, we were working on developing these concepts and doing public engagement. And then right now, we are working on selecting a recommended concept and something that we can start moving forward with in the fall. And In the fall, we want to begin installing TSP, assuming that everything looks good to the public. And then in 2022, we're going to start really working on taking things to final design. Put in a notice of intent, which is where we let the ANCs and the community know that we're going to be, let them really know in detail, going beyond these kind of concepts that we've shown you now, what our plan is for the project, and creating another opportunity to comment on the design of the project. And then in 2023, we would like to begin construction and finalize implementation. And we're going to be getting into question and answer shortly. I wanted to first kind of inform you a little bit about an opportunity to comment. When the meeting ends, you will be redirected to DDOT's Title VI Public Meeting Participant Questionnaire. As a recipient of federal assistance, DDOT must ensure that all of its programs, activities, and public meetings are conducted in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act ensures non-discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. The Title VI Public Meeting Participant Questionnaire is used to obtain information to help DDOT ensure that we are informing the public, conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner and in compliance with Title VI. If you are joining us over the phone or want to write down the link to the form so you can complete it, the URL or web address is rebrand.ly/MLK bus priority-comments. That's rebrand.ly/MLK BUS PRIORITY-COMMENTS. Project comments and/or concerns may also be submitted through this form. We appreciate anyone who is willing to complete the form. Also note that the project website is another way that you can submit comments, and all of those will go right to me. I want to open it up to questions and comments. Feel free to raise your hand. I haven't been able to monitor the chat during the meeting. Feel free to type anything in there, or you can reach out to the bus priority team at our phone number. It's 202-671-2376, and you can leave a voicemail telling us what your comment is verbally. And if you'd like to request a call back, just leave your contact information and one of us will get back to you. You can email me, kevin.harrison@dc.gov. And then there are links to the Bus Priority Programs website and the website for the MLK Bus Priority Project. And gonna ask Megan if we've received questions in the chat, or there are any raised hands, anybody that we should bring in.
Will, before we get to that, I just wanted to ask, I think you had intended to share a little information about other meetings that you'll be hopefully attending, or other ways people might be able to get involved here.
Yeah, definitely. So I will be attending the ANC 8A and ANC 8C monthly meetings. I don't believe the time and announcements have been put out yet, but those will be October 5th and October 6th. I'll also be tabling at Anacostia Metro Station. We still haven't settled on a date yet, but please reach out to me, and I'll be sure to let you know when I'll be out there. We're also going to be putting door hangers at residences on the corridor, just to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and that we would like to hear from them. This project is still in planning, so we'll be happy to hear not just which of the options do you prefer, but like how would you change the options, other ideas, suggestions. We are open to hearing all of that right now. And we'd like to get, we've been at this for 6-8 months or so, and we'd like to get all the comments by October 12th so that we can set a course of action. And you know, we will be attending the ANCs once again once we have made those decisions to let them know the direction we're going. And then you can be looking for an NOI, a notice of intent, to find out what we're moving forward with.
Great. Well, currently, I don't think, unless I'm totally botching this, but I don't think we've received any questions, which must mean that your presentation was very thorough. I'm looking to see, I don't think I see any hands raised, so maybe we can just give folks a minute or two to digest. And while you're doing that, I see we might have a question. I was just going to quickly say, you spoke a little bit about enforcement, Kevin, and just want to let folks know, you know, this is something that you know, is really important to ensuring we get the benefits from these investments that we're making here for buses and transit riders. So, you know, we are working to get automated camera enforcement for bus lanes and bus stops as part of the district's automated enforcement program. That's something that we will hopefully be able to be rolling out next year. And then we're also looking to make sure that we, you know, kind of have a layered approach. We're looking for, you know, creative solutions to ensure we have boots on the ground enforcement, as well as, you know, towing resources and you know, kind of to ensure that these lanes are safe and efficient for buses and for all users. And it looks I've stalled enough. I see some questions are coming in. I think I see Garrett, you had a question in the Q&A here, and I can read it aloud. It says, do you have a sense of what the difference in bus travel times would be between Alt 1 and Alt 2? And it's a two-part question, and also how many buses per hour in that stretch? Kevin, are you able to provide a little more information on that?
Yeah, so I don't have the number. I have the sort of approximate figures off the top of my head. And I believe that for the curb extension option, during the peak hours, it would be a reduction of about a little bit less than 2 minutes per bus. And then during the for the other option, it would be a little bit over 4 minutes per bus round trip. And buses, the frequency of buses varies throughout the course of the day, but it's about every 4 or 5 minutes during the peak, and then about 7 or 8 minutes off peak, and then much less frequent at night. But that's a time when there's less congestion, less ridership, and less delay. I was going to add just quickly to the enforcement bit that automated traffic enforcement would also be including cameras on board the buses. So it's not just at the intersections, but specifically when a bus needs to be in the bus lane is when, you know, violations of the bus lane would be detected.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Hopefully that answered your question, Garrett. Feel free to let us know if you have any follow-up. I see in the chat we have another question that's been raised. So let me just go ahead and read that out here. Excuse me. The question from Jocelyn is, I would like to know how the 600 new residences and current tenant numbers have been factored into the overall traffic impact with these potential changes. And she also asks, I'd also like to know if a similar plan has been put in place in a similar neighborhood with the same demos, DC or elsewhere, and what were the results? Do you want Kevin about the residences and growth in the area?
Yeah, so our traffic analysis, like an important part of it is that very little roadway capacity would be lost through the implementation of both of these proposals. It's really parking availability would be diminished. Roadway capacity would not be reduced. In fact, results indicate that both of these proposals would improve, would increase roadway capacity and reduce congestion, assuming that volumes on the roadway remain the same. However, our analysis assumed growth. There was recently an analysis of future growth in traffic in the corridor with the St. Elizabeth's campus improvements that factored in future growth through the corridor, including on St. Elizabeth's. And that is where we were able to pull our assumptions about growth for the corridor. And then the question I would also like to know if a similar plan has been put in place in a similar neighborhood with similar demographics, DC or elsewhere, what were the results? So I can speak better for DC in terms of bus lanes. You know, we've been implementing them across the district. You know, our oldest bus lane is from 2016. It's about a quarter mile on Georgia Avenue. Since the pandemic, we also added bus lanes on H and I Street, and then more bus lanes through the pandemic, and we're about up to 6 miles, but they're all relatively new. And the data sample that we're pulling from is during the pandemic. And then in the case of H and I Street, during the pandemic, and the early results are positive. You know, we're at about a 10% improvement in bus travel time on many of those lanes. And you know, it will vary greatly based on the levels of congestion that are currently being experienced in the corridor. Because, you know, that's what you would be overcoming with the bus lanes. In terms of kind of the road diet or converting peak hour parking to full-time parking, as is being proposed between Good Hope Road and W Street. You know, we've done a number of road diets across the district, and you know, I'm trying to think of one that's close to here. I'm not sure, Megan, if you have examples and kind of how those outcomes have been, but I kind of think of Sherman Avenue in Ward 1, where, you know, pedestrian amenities have been improved, street crossing distances have been shortened, and it's just generally a much more comfortable place to walk. And I believe that's borne out in the data that there are fewer crashes and lower travel speeds. I think congestion is pretty limited on that corridor. Megan, I'm not sure if you have anything to add there.
No, but Jocelyn, I'm happy if you want to send Kevin an email here, we can definitely follow up and make sure we, you know, plug you in with the folks, you know, who've worked on some of those safety assessments for some of our road diet projects. But I think Kevin's right in sort of the overall assessment for how the bus lanes have been going. This is definitely still, I wouldn't say it's, you know, new, but something that's growing in the district. And I just wanted to note, Jocelyn put another comment in the chat, you know, that the traffic and parking is challenging. And so with additional residents, you know, always wonder about coordination with developers and DOTs, and will need to be monitored if many of those new residents bring cars. And I think that's a really valid point. And we can definitely make sure to connect with our development review team and get some more information about, you know, parking availability or other, you know, transportation demand management strategies that are being coordinated with those developments, because we understand, as we said earlier, you know, this road is not getting widened. So just really appreciate that. And so feel free to follow up.
Yeah, and one last note I was just going to add on the traffic dynamics of MLK is, you know, it parallels 295. So the extent to which congestion is reduced on MLK, and, you know, MLK becomes a better option for driving to your destination. You know, 295 is a congested roadway with over 100,000 cars per day. And so it's very difficult to overcome that congestion on MLK. It's a complex dynamic, and it's definitely a challenge. And this project would really aim to be providing mobility on the bus, and then improving pedestrian comfort. And one of the best it's an opportunity to provide better alternatives, in addition to driving to get around.
Kevin, I also wanted to note that there is going to be another DDOT project in this area at MLK and Good Hope Road, which I think they're still in procurement, but hopefully we'll begin planning soon. And, we can definitely share that information on our project website so that folks can connect there, and, looking at how that intersection functions, the safety concerns that we know have been raised, and, also just the traffic operational concerns. So just wanted to note that's another effort that's going to be starting soon. And we'll definitely make sure to coordinate between the two projects. We are coordinating, and make sure that any feedback we get through this process, we relay to that team, and vice versa. I am not seeing any other questions at this point or any hands raised. So I think we can probably, give people another couple of seconds here if you wanted to, and we're having trouble finding the right button. Otherwise, Kevin, I didn't know if there are any other parting words or other information you wanted to provide here.
No, I really appreciate people taking the time. We're all very busy, and I really encourage you to think about these options. This presentation, both the PDF and the video, will be posted on the DDOT website, on the project website. Encourage you to share it with others that you may know who use the corridor or know the corridor. We are welcome your feedback, and are very interested to hear from the community, and look forward to hearing from you soon. It appears there are still no hands raised, no questions in the chat. So happy to conclude about 20 minutes early, and give people a little extra time this evening.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, be safe, and look forward to hearing from you. And thanks again for your time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.